Irashaimase! Hello and welcome to Fataris' Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fataris. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this Saturday we have Sky Racket, a unique blend of shoot 'em ups and brick breakers. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. From developer Double Dash Studios, Sky Racket released for PCs at the end of October 2019. It's a really unique combination of the shoot 'em up genre as well as brick breakers, creating what the developers call a shmup breaker. So what does that mean? Well, before I dive into it, let me just say that this is a game that I've actually had a lot of fun with. I really enjoy titles that combine shoot 'em ups with other genres in unique ways, and this one definitely does that. It does have demos available, and I'll include a link to the Steam page below where you can find a demo of the game, so if you're interested in checking this one out, you can do so for yourself. So as we go into start the game, we're taken to the story mode. Here we can rather start a save that we have previously played, or we can start a new save. Once you've started a new save, you'll be taken to the character select, and here you can choose between Racket Girl or Racket Boy. It doesn't really matter which character you pick though, as from the stage select it is possible to swap back and forth between the two characters. So here we are at Set 1 Celestial Cloud. So the game does keep a little bit of a tennis terminology vibe to it. So our first objective is to clear the set, and that'll be the case for most stages. Clear the set or win the match. For your first time through on a save, it will have a brief tutorial showing you the commands you have. So here we have the ability to strike, and this is our default hit that we'll be using for returning the enemy shots. We can move and we can roll, which is a combination of move and, on a PlayStation 4 controller, the X button. If it was a 360 controller, it would be the A button. So now we are given this really basic setup that we can see what kind of gameplay we have. So there'll be, in most of these sections, there'll be an enemy that will fire a shot, and then we can volley that shot back at them to clear blocks and also defeat additional enemies. And sometimes we'll have sections like this where we'll just see a whole bunch of enemies that come onto the screen, and we can hit those enemies with the shots that they fire back at us. There are some enemies like those ones aren't actually really enemies, that glow green, and those enemies we can hit and in some cases volley them into, or juggle them, I think is probably a better way to put it, into other enemies or other hittables, or strikeables, depending on how you want to term it, to both get more points and deal damage if that's what we're after. So the game does have a rather robust scoring system where each hit that we get increases our combo, and we can also build up a multiplier. We start at 1 and we can build up to a times 32 multiplier for really big points. Throughout the course of the gameplay, sometimes you'll take damage if you don't return an enemy shot, or in the case of some enemies, if those enemies happen to touch you, you'll take damage. It is possible, in that last section of blocks, we had a pink block where if we hit the pink block, we'll be able to gain a life. And this section here introduced some new types of blocks, ones that can take a couple hits, and I love the visual indicator for how they take those hits. So they have sunglasses looking all cool, but it is possible to make them look a little less cool by hitting them once. Their sunglasses will break, and then if we hit them again, they pop. So just that great little visual indicator that the enemy can take multiple hits and how many hits they've taken is really appreciated. So here's a fun little section where we're given basically a multi-ball, several shots that we can hit and bounce around the stage to clear all these blocks. So the angle you hit the shots back is actually very important, as the shot will return back at an angle based off of where you hit it in the arc that's in front of your character. And it takes a little bit of practice to get a really good feel for that. So that's the end of stage 1. At the end of most stages, you'll encounter that round satellite, and then that once you hit that, you've cleared the set. We have several goals at the end of the stage that are presented. So there's always the main goal of clear the set or win the match. And then you have several objectives after that. Almost always they'll be present is don't get hit. And then the others will depend on the stage themselves. So the game itself can be quite challenging. So some of the later challenges, I can't imagine how you would go through some of the stages without getting hit or completing some of the other objectives. So in each world, and there are 4 worlds throughout the course of the game, we have a buddy that we can rescue. Thank you for rescuing me. My name is Batata. I've heard you're trying to take down that tyrant jerk Korag. He's on his ship traveling to a forest planet. Let me help you. So we can turn him down, not now, or we can of course say for sure, all right, let's go. So you can see here we have a little Batata icon next to our character, and we can move on to set 2. So the game goes over the last little mechanic, which is just how to use your buddy. On a PlayStation 4 controller, it's circle, and it would be the B button on an Xbox controller. I do appreciate that it takes the time just to go over the mechanics, even though they're really simple. Although it doesn't necessarily explain what some of those mechanics do. Like the roll just allows you to move around really fast on the stage, and it does make things a little bit easier to avoid shot-wise, although you're not invulnerable. So Batata here, his ability is to fire a twin shot, and then it's possible to upgrade him by collecting another Batata, and at that point he's firing an awesome multi-shot that we can use to take out enemies. So here we're introduced to enemies that don't fire shots that we can strike back, but rather fire pink lasers that if we, hit, will take damage, making them quite difficult to take out. So you want to be careful with those subcats, as the shots that they're firing we can't do anything about. We have to find other ways to strike them back. So this particular set of blocks is actually really fun, as you have the block circling the stage. Around a center. So more bananas to hit. Let's build up some big multipliers, pop some corn. So the game has a really great visual feel, and I really enjoy the soundtrack as well. The whole combination of what would be a shoot 'em up with the elements of I didn't think I got hit there. With the brick breaking is like satisfying and is well executed, though I do have a few complaints about that. So there are situations where it feels like there's not enough strikeable objects, so the enemies aren't firing enough shots at you to really feel like you're able to do a whole lot. So there's just, I guess a good way to describe it would be like quiet times where you don't have a whole lot that you feel your character can do. As we're not really capable of dealing direct damage ourselves, we have to deal damage with what the enemies give us. Alright, that's set 2, and that'll bring us to the boss of the first world. So the boss fights are where I feel this game really shines. Some of them have frustrated me, some of them have been just really fun. There have been some enjoyable Easter eggs spread throughout them. So there's our big baddie there, using his abilities on this little banana. Intense boss fight approaching. Beware. And we get this evil baddie. Plantinor, phenomenal provider of potassium. So the boss fights in particular are where the game really shines and feels more like shoot 'em up, and in some cases, bullet hell shoot 'em up. So the first boss fight itself is relatively straightforward, but the other ones, I feel like things get a little bit more difficult. It's kind of like, still not quite on the same level, but similar to something like maybe Cuphead, where the fights themselves can be trickier and more difficult, but are very satisfying to learn the fights themselves and how best to go about clearing them. Also, another really interesting thing about the boss fights is there are different phases to the boss, but they're not necessarily indicated on the health bar. They'll just like pop up as you're moving through the fight itself. Oh, we took a shot and lost Batata there. Almost done. So, there you have it. Sky Racket served up for your enjoyment. So, as far as minus flavors are concerned, I do have that complaint where I just feel like there isn't enough for your character to do all the time. Sometimes things just get too quiet. And that can be a problem for a shoot 'em up that should stay really. Let's see what's the best way. It's way to put it. A shoot 'em up which should stay fully engaging the whole time. Then there's also the problem of length. The game itself is on the shorter side, having just 4 worlds, even if some of the later worlds are more difficult, and then a final world which is just a boss fight. There's also a problem where the game itself, like, once you lose all your lives, you get a game over, and there aren't checkpoints in the stage. You just start off at the beginning of the stage. Not a huge problem, but one that actually does help the length of the game, but in kind of an artificial way. If you did have checkpoints, it might be a little bit too easy and make the game shorter than it currently is. But as far as the plus flavors are concerned, I feel that there are quite a few good ones. So one of the big ones I feel are the boss fights themselves. Though that they can be frustrating, I do appreciate that they're all unique and just special in their own way. I also think that the soundtrack and the art are just awesome, and I really, really love that blend of a shoot 'em up with other genres. So I really appreciate the experimentation that's going on here. So, once again, there we have it. Sky Racket served up for your enjoyment. So this is definitely a title that I can recommend, and I think, if nothing else, you should at least take the time to check out one of the demos that's available online. Alright, that'll just about wrap it up for this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday. As always, I want to thank you so much for coming out and joining me this week, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.